Okay.
Good evening and welcome to this session of Phi Business School. As Dean of this business school, it's an honor for me to introduce you to Mr. Nikesh Arora, who, as you know, is Vice President for Europe, Middle East and Africa of Google, one of the most innovative company, I would say, worldwide. And as you know, the company that has been ranked by Fortune in the past 2 years as the favorite for MBA students. So it's an honor for us to have you here. But Mr. Arora has a very interesting, brilliant trajectory curriculum. He was graduated as electrical engineering from Varanasi University in India. He later joined an MBA program at Northeastern University in Boston, a CFA in Boston College. Then he started working for Putnam and Fidelity Associates as analyst. He combined this position with classes at both Boston College and Northeastern University. And from there, he joined a company, a subsidiary of British Deutsche Telekom, which was T-Motion first and then T-Mobile in Germany. And some years ago, he was offered by Google the position that he currently runs. I read that you had to pass 17 different interviews in order to get the position,
Yes.
which is a long, which shows actually how seriously, Google actually takes the enrollment process. But anyway, Mr. Arora also combines his responsibilities at Google with something that is less known. He's also senior advisor at Silver Lake, which is a global private investment firm managing $14 billion in assets and specialized in technology. So he has a very multifaceted perspective, and I'm sure that his presentation on the future of internet will be fascinating for all of us. So again, Mr. Arora, thanks very much for being here with us, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. I know some of you have come from work. I'm sorry, every time I see a classroom, I feel like I have to act like a professor, so I'm going to come in the front and do this if you don't mind. Is that okay, if I do this from here?
Excellent. We're going to move to the slides.
Okay,
Because
whatever you
we're
want.
making a presentation.
Whatever you want. I have slides, I can make a presentation. Before I make my presentation, I actually want to take a few minutes and ask you guys, what is it that you'd like to hear about? The topic is the future of the internet, but we can talk about Google, we can talk about whatever you'd like to talk about.
Mobile search.
Mobile search.
Advertising exchange.
Sorry?
Advertising exchange platforms.
Advertising exchange platforms.
Fostering innovation.
Fostering innovation. YouTube channel.
The future of e-commerce.
The future of e-commerce.
Mobile services.
Sorry?
Mobile services.
Mobile services. Mobile, yes. Android, mobile.
New things that nobody knows about.
Sorry, what?
New things that nobody knows about.
New things that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
The business model of Latitude.
The business model of Latitude. Mobile again.
Innovation.
Innovation, okay.
Open source.
Open source.
Google and an operating system.
Google and an operating system.
What about copyrights?
Copyrights.
How many years are we going to stay together?
How many years? You and me?
How many hours? How many days?
Stay together as in stay where? Stay alive?
No.
Here. Oh, how much time do we have?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know, how much time do you have? Yes.
Google's greatest challenges and how you plan to overcome them.
Google's greatest challenge is how you plan. Then they don't become challenges anymore. The whole idea of challenges, I have no idea. But
Future of Microsoft.
You're in the wrong classroom. That's the other one. The other guy, he's presenting there. In the other room.
Google in the emerging markets.
Google in the emerging markets.
Comparison to Microsoft.
The future of Facebook.
Future of Facebook.
Google als een telecom company.
Google as a telecom company. Jeez. I should just shut this presentation down. You guys do not want to know about the future of the internet 10 years from now, right? That is not your interest. Okay. So you have two choices now. You have to vote. This is how we work in collaborative society, right? In collaborative society, the consumers are in control, or at Facebook or Obama's election. You have a choice. You can watch me make this presentation of 19 slides with 5 videos, which is about the future of the internet, or I can answer all your questions by telling a story for the next 20, 30 minutes. Which one do you prefer? How many people vote for the presentation?
Let's make both. Let's make both.
Okay. All right. I guess how many people would rather me answer all these questions than tell the stories? One person, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think the crowd has voted in favor of the presentation. Some people said both. Sorry?
You can send the videos and we'll see them later.
They're all on YouTube. And this one will be too. All right, so let's talk about where we are. So I'll try and answer a lot of your questions, and I sort of have an idea what you guys are asking about, but if I forget something, please remind me, and I'm sure you will. All right? Where are we? 10 years ago, there were, I said these numbers this morning, there were 70 million people connected to the internet. Today there are 1.4 billion people connected to the internet. 10 years ago there were 57,000 of those connected by broadband. Today there are 400 million connected by broadband. Why didn't you come and sit down? It's easier. Because I'll keep watching. When are you going to make the move? So it's very dangerous. I'll keep watching. He's going to make a move. When? So come sit down. So we've come a long way. We've come a long way in 10 years. We've come to a place where 10 years ago, the internet was for early adopters. It was for communication. What could you do with a narrowband connection on the internet? How many of you have a narrowband connection to the internet? Narrowband? Had. Yeah. That's like saying how many of you were young ones? Sorry. So you all have a broadband connection. Can you imagine going back to a narrowband connection? Can you imagine not having an internet connection? Right? So we have already come to a point where, as a generation, we believe that internet has become a must-have. Right? Now, this is a very interesting phenomenon, the phenomenon of the must-have. And if I was a consumer company, I would love to be with a product that becomes a must-have. If you can think of other products in our lives that have become from a nice-to-have to must-have, the moment products go from a nice-to-have to must-have, you have suddenly hit the consumer gold mine. Right? Think of mobile phones. The moment they go from nice-to-have to must-have, this is an industry forever. Think about electricity. Think about internet connection. So it's fascinating. If you're ever going to come up with a new idea, think how an idea can go from a nice-to-have to a must-have. And the moment you go from a nice-to-have to must-have, you've just created yourself a brand, and you've just created yourself a business, right? So anyway, so that's where we have come in 10. That's where we've come in 10 years. Now, in 10 years, what has happened is, I liken the 1.4 billion people connected to the internet as almost a country in its own right. And why do I call it a country? You can call it many different things. But the whole idea of having 1.4 billion people connected and calling them a country in their own right is because they start to exhibit similar behaviors. Right? Because they have similar social rules. We all know the rules of Facebook, MySpace, Vivo. They're sort of the rules of social networking. But all the people, 1.4 billion people who want to participate in social networking follow the same rules, right? By definition, because the rules have been set by Facebook, MySpace, Vivo, Orkut. Or the rules of consuming entertainment are now defined by the YouTubes and the Hulus and the Juice and the Meta Cafes of the world, right? It's interesting. This country is beginning to form its own rules. Everybody in this new country is trying to manage their own identity, right? Think about it. All of you have an email address. Most of you have multiple email addresses. I remember getting my first email address. I didn't quite care what it was called. Actually, I preferred not to call it Nikesh Arora at AOL.com. I didn't want to call it that because I wasn't sure what this thing was, why I want it. Now, I promise if every one of you was offered your first name or first name, last name at Gmail, something, you would take it, right? Because you want it to represent your identity. Right? It's interesting. We've evolved from a point where we didn't want it to be associated with us. Same things happened on Facebook, by the way. A lot of people went to Facebook with identities they didn't want to disclose. Right? They actually didn't want to say, I'm on Facebook. They didn't want to put their name. Suddenly they realized, if I don't put my first name, last name at Facebook, my friends can't find me. So suddenly we've actually gone back and recreated our identities on Facebook by actually calling ourselves because we're trying to maintain our identities. So what's happening is this is actually turning into a sort of a different country of its own. Now the reason this country is very interesting is because it represents 17% of the world's population. It's as big as China and India, but it is even more economically sound and probably has the highest GDP in the world because it represents 86% of the world's GDP. Right? Interesting. So as a business person, it's fascinating for me because suddenly what you've done is you've collected 86% of the world's GDP in one place, who I can reach very effectively using a common distribution mechanism. I can start a service today and I can target the 1.4 billion people, whether you call it Skype, YouTube, MySpace, Bebo, Facebook, Google, right? And I can actually serve 86% of the world's GDP. That's going to change the shape of business, don't you think? So if you think about what that's done, it's impacted our lives everywhere, right? How do we consume information? The way we consume information is we now go to the web. 10 years ago, the way to consume information was you went to a library. You read the morning newspaper. Now, anything you want to look for, you go to the web. There are 2 billion searches a day. That's a lot. That means everybody searches more than at least once today or at least twice a day. And anytime I speak, I'm pretty sure in this room, how many of you only do 2 searches a day? Right? So there's clearly a whole bunch of people sitting connected to the internet not searching. We have to find them, but that's my next task. Right? If you look at how we consume communication, I told you I remember I used to work, as you just heard, I used to work at Putnam Investments as I used to manage money. And the biggest technological revolution in our business was I was allowed to send email outside the company. Really, I'm serious. Because the first IT guy said, oh my God, this is dangerous. People can send messages outside the company. Well, that's sort of the whole idea of communication, I thought. But anyway, but IT guys were concerned about security. And the other thing which they were concerned about was, so they said, fine, you can send emails, but please be careful about attachments. If you download an attachment, it could bring the network down. Have you ever remember those days? Maybe I'm too old here, but there was a day when your IT department, if you work for a company, said, please don't download emails. And my God, don't play a video. You bring the entire neighborhood's network down, not just our company. Right? Those are the days. That wasn't long ago. That was 10 years ago. Right? And today, honestly, when I got my first AOL account, I literally had to call a friend to say, can you please send me an email? I want to check if this is working or not. Right? Because nobody used to send me emails. That's probably very early on. I actually got the account, cancelled it for 3 months, and then got it again. So today, if you look, I'm sure there are numbers up there. There we go. There are about 100 billion emails, non-spam emails sent a day. 100 billion. And the fascinating part is people say, well, there's a physical limitation. There are 24 hours in a day. There's so many times you can communicate. Right? So when I used to work in the mobile phone industry, people said, well, you've got mobile phones now. Earlier there used to be fixed line phones. When mobile phones come, people will stop using the fixed line phones and the total number of minutes will stay constant. Actually, with the advent of the mobile phone, the number of minutes has actually gone up by 60% on a per person basis. Yes, the shift has happened from fixed line to mobile, but we actually end up talking more than we used to talk because more people have phones now. And sort of email is the same way. We end up talking more than we used to. Probably we have more half conversations on email than we used to. And especially if you look at the teenagers who can chat with 6 people, send 2 emails, listen to music, and watch TV at the same time, they found a way of expanding the day, right? So anyway, the way we're going to communicate with these 1.4 billion people in this country is going to be very different. Right? This is no longer going to be snail mail. This is going to be communication instantly. I'm actually told email has also become what people used to do yesterday. Now you just change your status on Facebook and tell each other what you're doing. But I don't. Entertainment. The way we consume entertainment 10 years ago was we went to the movie theater. I grew up in India. We had one television channel. Not 10, maybe 15, 18 years ago. We had one television channel. If you wanted to watch it, you could watch it. Your choice was limited to one television channel. So the entire country knew what was going to be happening at that time, and you could pretty much guess if there was a cricket match showing at a certain point in time in India, the traffic in the streets would just go down. Like everybody would be at home watching television because they had one channel. I mean, we all knew what was going on. And it was a wonderful world for advertising companies and media buying companies. I have a wonderful choice for you to buy media. There is one television channel. There is one price. The problem now is we have 500 in every country. That becomes a problem, right? But the way we're consuming entertainment now, I won't ask this question and embarrass you, but I'm sure all of you watched a video on the web in the last week, yes? And 2 years ago, if you asked that question, it would be impossible. A lot of you would have said, maybe I watched one a month ago, I watched one 2 months ago. And now, it's come to a point where, at least if there is some video content, I believe it is somewhere on the web, I just haven't been able to find it. Right? It's come to that sort of, it exists on the web. And that's sort of what happened with Google, is sort of now when people think about, if you remember the early days of the internet, you went to a party and you were talking about the internet and finding information, and then somebody will say, I found this really cool thing on the internet. And so wait, let me know what website. You take out a pen and you write down the website, right? Because he told me this website. Today, okay, yeah, I found this cure on the internet. I know, I'm sure I can find it. It was a really good website. Should I tell you? No, I'm sure. If it's there, I'll Google it. Right? Or I'll, whatever you do, Microsoft it or Yahoo it. Or Yahoo it. I'm sure there are people in this room who do those things as well, which is good. You should. It's important. But that's how we work, right? Now we believe there is video content on the web. We're going to consume it. I think the biggest revolution in our times, which will be very visible, will be the change in the entertainment industry. Just the way talent is discovered, just the way talent is represented, just the way talent is shared, just the way people sort of create new content, create new programming, the way advertising is attached to it, it's all going to change. And we'll talk about more about that. Commerce, somebody asked about e-commerce, right? The global e-commerce market this year, 2008, was $440 billion. $152 billion in Europe. That's a nice number. $152 billion is real money, right? But more importantly, over 70% of the transactions in the developed world, over $1,000, are impacted by the web. So people may not buy it on the web, but they actually research it on the web, right? If you were going to buy something for more than 1,000 euros, would you not spend some time researching it? And what do? You wake up in the middle of the night or wake up in the morning or whenever you do this, you actually research it on the web and you walk up and say, I found it in 3 different places, and then you go and try and buy it, right? And the bigger the price becomes, the more research you do. And the bigger the price becomes, then it goes from research to fantasy, but that's okay, right? Eventually we'll all get there. We'll all look at bigger and bigger things. So it's interesting. That 70% number, which is influence, it's just a matter of time. After a point in time when we start getting more and more comfortable that we understand the quality of the good and quality of the service, I actually don't want to physically go get it myself because, if you ask my wife, she considers commerce as entertainment as opposed to entertainment. That's okay. But for me, commerce is about convenience. I want to get something. I would much rather be able to get it on the web and not actually have to physically go there, wait for a shop person to talk to me and go through the whole process of explaining and then do the transaction, give my credit card and come back and find out I spend 1 hour trying to buy 5 shirts. Right? I'd much rather, I know what I want, I can look for it, I can pay it, it'll show up in my house. Tomorrow morning I'll be at work. Right? So there's an interesting convenience factor. And every time you tell the story, right, and people will tell you, yeah, but you realize the ability to go there and touch and feel something is so important, right? I stopped touching tomatoes and touching cucumbers to buy them, honestly. I'll buy 2 more and they'll come to my house and if one of them is bad, I'll use the other one. It's okay. But I'd much rather have the convenience. But it goes back to my point about the transition generation, right? We are the transition generation. We know how life was without the internet. And we know what life is with the internet. Our kids are not going to know what life was without the internet. So they will not know that option existed. Right? Sort of like, I probably get, this is on video somewhere, right? Are you recording this?
We are actually broadcasting.
Where is the camera?
There's one.
Be careful, whatever you say. Okay. Yeah. You guys didn't tell me. I have to be very careful. My wife could be watching, right? I was going to say, she talks about let's go camping, and every time she says let's go camping, I say, when they discovered houses, they never went back to the cave to say let's go spend 2 weeks in the cave, because it's really fun without the electricity, the water, and everything else. So it's sort of like that. Let's go back to the age before the internet. I don't think there are going to be tourist trips of kids going back to the age before the internet. It's not going to happen. But what that means is that what we believe today, that both forms are going to exist, may actually go away at some point in time. I've told this story before. This is the problem of having videos on YouTube. I will tell the story again, and people say, oh my God, he tells the same stories. But I'll tell it again anyway, because I like it, right? When I moved to the UK, I bought myself a DVD player. I had VCRs from the US, and I plugged it the wrong power and wrong frequency, and it blew up. Surprise, surprise, right? So when I went to the store, the guy said, don't buy a VCR, buy a DVD player. So I bought a DVD player, right? And I went to rent a DVD, or I found out that the store only had tapes, and there was a small section of DVDs where I could choose from 100 DVDs, and they were all classics, because they somehow believed classics have sustained themselves from an economic perspective for so long that people will still watch them so they can make some money. But there's no way they're going to make money with DVDs of new movies, because not enough people have DVD players. That's fine. That was the logic 9 years ago. Today that place is not a tape store, it's a DVD store, and they don't even have tapes. But had I walked up to you in this room and said 10 years from now there will be no VCRs and no tapes, you guys said no, wait, I'm sure that's a good idea, but I'm sure a lot of people have DVDs, but some people will still have VCRs. Maybe 20%, maybe 30%. It's gone. How many of you have a camera? All of you have a camera. How many of you have the camera where you put the reel and you put it on the other side and then you take pictures? Remember that one? Right? I'm sure you all have one. I have 3. Do you have one of those? How many of you have those? You don't know what that is. She doesn't know what that is. You know the camera I'm talking about, where you put a reel in the... You buy. Is there a Spanish way of saying this? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, you have one of those. No, you don't. Very good. How many people have one of those in their house? Wow. Okay, when was the last time you used it? Come on, tell me. Be honest. I don't remember, right? But 5 years ago, if I told you those cameras are going to be useless, you won't be able to sell them for €1, and you need a digital camera, and that's what life is going to be about, would you have believed me? Would you? 5 years ago, would you have believed me? That you will not be able to go buy those little, what do you call them? Rolls, right. You won't be able to buy those rolls. Imagine taking a picture, going to the photo shop and getting them to develop it, and then coming back home and saying, oh my God, look, I was looking away in that picture. Oh my God, look, my eyes look red in that picture. Right? Or look, it's washed out. My whole day got washed out. I have no memories of my vacation. Remember those times? And even then when people were shown digital cameras, they said, no, this is precious. This is so good. You can focus better. It has all these things. You remember those or not? But could you have predicted 5 years ago that this is going to happen? So the question to you is, what are you watching now that is going to make something vanish in 5 years or 10 years from now that we all believe is going to stay for longer? It's always easy to go back and look and say, look at that, I could, that's pretty cool. I understand that used to happen 10 years ago. What can you think of now that is going to vanish in 5 to 10 years from now? Any ideas? What? Desktops.
Newspapers?
Wrong meeting.
SMSs.
SMSs.
Mobile phones.
So for all those guys talking about mobiles, talk to him. That's in that category of nobody knows that. Right? I think we should talk to him. I think you should come here and talk now. I think that's a much more interesting speech than mine.
Standalone TVs.
Standalone TVs as opposed to stand with somebody TVs?
No.
Sorry?
The normal TVs as opposed to displays and computers. The TV receivers.
So those screens will go away. Right? Yeah. I'm sure some people would have laughed and somebody said those SLR cameras are going to go away. So the more you laugh, more likely he's right. That's it. We have a limited imagination. This is the problem with too much education. It restricts our ability to think.
Hard disks.
Sorry?
Hard disks.
Hard disks will go away.
That like phone.
landline phones, CDs. Interesting. Possibly. Maybe we'll just carry a USB around. Right? Like, so instead of carrying a mobile phone, can you just put it on my device as opposed to put it on a CD? Yes.
Mining bills, secure.
Well, given the financial crisis is going away anyway. That has made it vanish much faster than anything else. Okay, yes.
Keyboards and mice.
Keyboards and mice. Interesting. Well, I don't know the answer. I wish I did, but all these are valid suggestions, and it's more for you guys to decide which of these are going to vanish. But anyway, what are these 1.4 billion people doing? They're forming communities, right? 175 million people on Facebook, 18 million change their status every day. But 18 million change their status every hour. Sorry. 18 million change their status every hour on Facebook. These are these 1.4 billion people in this new country. This is how they behave. And what's fascinating is we've gone to like these self-forming communities. They form for a particular topic and then they go away. Right? They form, they help elect Barack Obama, and then they go away, then they focus on something else, and they focus on education, they focus on health, then they get together and they talk about an artist, and they get together as a separate community and talk about one of their political passions. It's fascinating. This is how this country behaves. They don't do sampling like Nielsen. Remember those? Any of you work in the television industry? Yes? How do you do research? You put 5,000 people with bright lights and put a little box in their house and say, because these 5,000 people did this, that means 60 million people must be doing the same thing. Right? Sort of. I'm simplifying for effect, but you understand what I mean. So that's not what this country does. They actually ask the entire 1.4 billion people, and then 300,000 people react one way and 5 million people react the other way, and that becomes life, right? So suddenly these communities are forming. That's how they form public opinion. Okay. Well, this is Roy Amara, who actually he's telling my DVD story and my digital camera story and your television story and your mice and keyboard story and desktop story. He's basically saying we tend to overestimate the short term and underestimate the long term. This is like me and my boss. He said, when will you get this done? I was like, I'll get it done next week. I'm always wrong. But when I say in 10 years this is going to vanish, it actually vanishes in 5 years. So and that's chronic. Everybody knows this, but we still do it. Maybe that's how our brains are programmed. So, this is my view of how things are going to be in 2019, and maybe a lot more different things will happen. Probably most of these things may not happen because very often somebody who said there's only need for 5 PCs and 5 mainframes in the world and something like number of PCs, right? So, in that same vein, what's going to happen? So it's towards your comment of the hard disk going away. You made a comment that hard disks should go away. So this is in that line. I believe we'll be living in the cloud. I don't know. Oh, that's not mine. It's your BlackBerry. I think we'll be living in the cloud. What I mean by that cloud is that everybody will have a broadband connection. When you have a broadband connection, a lot of your data is stored on the web. And what's interesting is if you think about innovation, people talked about innovation. Innovation actually used to happen for corporates in the past. Companies would innovate, and we'd innovate products for companies. So the PC came and companies bought lots of PCs. Software came and companies bought a lot of software. For the first time, what this is doing is actually innovation is coming for the consumer, right? Everybody has an email account, right? Personal email account. Where's your data stored? Not on your hard disk. It's actually stored on the web. Where's your Facebook information stored? It's stored on the web. Where are YouTube videos stored? They're on the web. Where are your Flickr photographs or your Picasa photographs stored? They're all stored on the web. But guess what? Our consumer lives are actually moving to the cloud. Right? It's a matter of time where our work lives are also going to move to the cloud, because it's much cheaper to maintain the cloud than as opposed to everybody's laptop. People's laptop gets stolen, information gets stolen. So it's a matter of time when entire corporate databases will move to the cloud, so they can basically be mobile wherever you are. Once everything's on the cloud, you can access it wherever you want. It's extremely inconvenient for us to be carrying our laptops. Say, wait, let me get my laptop. Oh my God, I forgot it home. Oh my God, my laptop's broken. I can't show you information. Or my Word document is on my PC. Or 3 million records of individuals in the UK is on somebody's PC and it gets stolen, and then it's in the hands of the wrong people. All those things will go away. We'll be living in the cloud. Now, when you live in the cloud, that has huge impact on the software industry, huge impact on life, huge impact on technology, but I think we will be. So you guys can work out what that means for our businesses, for our lives, right? We have a notion of creative collaboration, right? Suddenly, somebody talked about Android, the notion of open source. I think the idea of hiring 3,000 people, putting them in a warehouse and getting them to program for 5 years, and then come out and say, voila, I have an operating system, or voila, I have new software for you, is arcane. You know, at Google, we're always running what we call a 1% experiment. That means we're always trying something with 1% of our users differently to see if that's more effective than what's going on with the 99%. And if it works, we introduce it to the 99% by the evening. Right? That's how product development is done now. You start in the morning, you have an idea, you program it for 1% of the people, you look at the feedback. If it works, you put it to the other 99% tomorrow morning. If it doesn't work, you go back and try something else. As opposed to designing 47.9 million features, of which we're not even sure what people want. So it's going to be interesting. As you go along, you're going to see there's going to be tremendous amounts of creative collaboration. The way it's going to work is, for example, Android, we put the entire source code on the web, right? You can actually program using the code. And now hundreds of thousands of developers can over time program against that code to create applications even we couldn't have thought of. But that's how you do creative collaboration. And by the way, that's not restricted to the software world. I will show you a video of Paulo Coelho, who I'm sure all of you know, who actually tried creative collaboration in creating movies. Right? There's a creative collaboration project where there's a woman called Joan McDonigal who started a game called I Love Bees. And the game has 600,000 people registered. And the way it works is, there's no leaders, it's a game. And the way it works, the one thing which I read was interesting was, they actually said to all the people who registered that we're going to call 1,000, they identified 1,000 phone boxes around the world, right? 1,000 physical phone boxes. And so now we're going to call a phone box at random out of the 1,000, and say 5 words to whoever answers the phone. And then a few minutes later, we will call the next random phone box. And the person who picks up the phone must be able to say the 5 words, and we will tell them 5 new words. And then we will call a third random phone box. That was the game. And the users won. And there was no leader, there was no rules defined, there were 600,000 people registered in the community. They figured it out themselves how to solve this problem. So what they're doing now, she's actually doing a new game, but the new game is about trying to predict the scenarios of the world. The new game is how would we live if there is no oil? And they're looking to find a way that 600,000 people will come with different ideas and try and paint the picture of the world. And there's going to be many such scenarios and games that are going to happen, which is again the process of creative collaboration. You know? I was saying earlier to you that a few companies have started and got together, and there's a website called InnoCenter where they've taken all their academics and researchers and pooled them, and they said it's okay if we're running into a problem in doing pharmaceutical research or biological research, that we can put our problem on this website and 70,000 academics around the world can help solve the problem. It's okay. We're comfortable sharing our problem to get a solution, because we'd much rather solve the problem than only have 500 or 300 researchers trying to solve it, because somebody else could have a brilliant idea. So these 1.4 billion people are going to live in a very different world in the way they do creations and they do creativity, right? Here's the video.
My computer and I just conjured up a new tale. In it I tell the story of a woman named Athena, but I want you to help me bring her to life.
I see her as a tall, young woman, not that young, and beautiful. Maybe I'll do the actor-director thing and cast myself. It should feel moody. Let's shoot it in black and white, in the city.
And I see the music like this. No, it needs to be way more dramatic. Let's bring it down a little bit. It needs a piano.
Beautiful. I never would have seen it that way.
Be a part of Paulo Coelho's experimental witch film competition and submit your film at hp.com/personal.
So what I think there's numbers, a few thousand people directed different chapters of his book and submitted their videos to be part of his movie. And he went and watched all of them, and then he decided which ones were relevant to the way he had thought about writing the book, and he put them together into a 3-hour movie with a few thousand directors, right? And he chose the 16 most interesting ones, put them into a 3-hour movie, and I think it was at the Berlinale Film Festival. It's a different way of doing it. This is a different concept of creative collaboration. Heinz did an ad for the Super Bowl where they actually had a website where they asked creative people around the world to submit an ad, and they were going to give $54,000 reward to anybody who submitted the best ad. For those of you who work in the advertising industry, that $54,000 is a lot less than what normally you would charge as an ad agency to do the creative piece of work for the middle of the Super Bowl. So a bit of it is scary as well, right? And they got a few thousand entries, and they chose the top 15 and put them up on their website. And they chose one which they showed in the middle of the Super Bowl, and then they started another one. Again, a different way of doing creativity and different way of collaborating around creativity. So we talked about mobile. We are going to be able to do smarter search, right? Because there's lots and lots of stuff about us which is getting more and more available, and lots of our preferences are getting understood. So the ability to sense what we want and be able to present what we want is going to be interesting. Now, just so that you understand, in 2003, the University of California did a study and figured out there were 5 exabytes of information in the world. So for those of you who don't know what an exabyte is, if you were watching 1 exabyte as television programming, it would take you 40,000 years. Right? So there were 5 exabytes created until 2003. In 2008, 273 exabytes were created. Just think about the amount of content out there. Some good, some bad, some useful, some useless. But that's the amount of content out there. So one of the challenges we're going to have as we continue to get into more of this 1.4 billion to going to 6 billion digital society is we're going to have so much information that the whole idea, the whole ability for us to find what we're looking for is going to become more and more important. This is not an ad for our existence. This is just that there's going to be too much information in the world. And we have to figure out ways of trying to find the right information and present it to the people as and when they're looking for it, as opposed to us trying to search for it. Right?
Since people matter in your pictures, now Picasa Web Albums also has a new feature called name tags that can help you quickly and easily identify who the people are in your photos. Name tags works by using our new clustering technology that automatically groups pictures containing similar faces. Instead of trying to tag your entire photo collection one picture at a time, now you can use name tags to label many photos at once. You can enter a new name or select from one of your existing contacts. Or you can also add name tags to your photos individually.
So this is interesting. So the reason I showed you this is that there's a lot more information technology that is going to get developed, which is going to start creating like sort of clustering or right kinds of information. So the point of this video was that we're beginning to work on facial recognition, right? So that if you have a photo album of 6,000 pictures, it actually figures out which picture has your mother in all of them. So you can search and say, which pictures is my mother in? And once you've identified your mother, it then will look for all the photographs to decide which one's your mother. It'll be interesting to see who else looks like your mother, but that's people tell my daughter she looks like me, so we'll see. Right? We'll find out if this technology can distinguish between me and her. But the point I'm trying to make is, again, lots of different technology is going to come into play, which is going to, again, allow us to become smarter and smarter about searching for things. And that's just one concept, but I think that Flickr is coming with a technology where, if you had a picture of the Eiffel Tower, then it can go through all the pictures in their database and tell you where you had a picture of the Eiffel Tower. So there's a combination of both my tagging as well as global tagging, which allows us to start looking at things from a visual information perspective, right? Anyway, so there's going to be tremendous amounts of advances in visualization, and I won't go to you. How many of you guys have seen Street View at Google?
Sorry?
What? Yeah, you've seen it, right? So again, a whole different way of thinking about maps and thinking about local information, right? It suddenly, I remember for years just looking at those in the UK A to Z maps, those little yellow lines and blue lines, and sometimes I would never know there's a news. You go somewhere and say a whole new locality has been created, but it's not in the A to Z, right? So once in a while, I suddenly come to a dead end and the map has nothing, and then I'm looking, but I can see a road and I don't see it in the map. I've had those situations in life, but now it's like, I drive around, I go to California, I drive around with my BlackBerry looking at how to find my way around, and sometimes I'll go to a street view to see, it looks like I'm on the right road, but I can't see any signs. So it looks and says, I don't see these buildings, I must be on the wrong road. So it's sort of, there's this whole visualization that is going to become more and more important in the next 10 years, and we're going to start thinking of information differently. Again, this whole notion of tagging, the whole notion of visualization I'm talking about is because there is so much information and we've got to find ways of parsing it and making it more intelligent for us to consume as users.
Data is often better than you think. The whole pattern here of the world, which is more or less like this. And if we look at it, how it looks the world, in 1960, it starts to move, 1960. This is Mao Zedong. He brought health to China. And then he died, and then Deng Xiaoping came and brought money to China and brought them into the mainstream again. And we have seen how countries move in different directions like this. So it's sort of difficult to get an example country which shows the pattern of the world. But I would like to bring you back to about here at 1960. If we move back again here and we put on trails on them like this, you can see again that the speed of development is very, very different. And the countries are moving more or less in the same rate as money and health. But it seems you can move much faster if you are healthy first than if you are wealthy first.
So again, the reason I showed you this video is this is Hans Rosling. He's done this amazing work where he takes thousands and thousands of data points and combines them into this visualization technology that makes it easier for us to understand. I mean, you could see the same information in lots and lots of charts and lots and lots of data, but he would not understand this and he would not be able to visualize this, and he's created these tools which create this visualization which makes it more and more possible to consume data. One of my personal favorites is, again, perhaps real translation will become a reality in 10 years from now. Have you ever tried to translate something on the web? It's pretty crappy, isn't it? Yeah. Because the current translation mechanism is word for word. I know a word, I translate it, and that word has to be translated. But that doesn't work because we don't speak in words, we speak in sentences. So one of the things which is now possible with technology is because so many books in the world are getting digitized, instead of looking for a word-for-word translation, we can actually look at the same sentence in 40 different books which are written in English and in Spanish and see how the sentence is translated. And say, wow, if the sentence is translated the same way 80% of the time, therefore it must be the sentence that means this. If you take that further, there's tremendous amounts of development in voice technology, and my favorite example is I could be calling you on my phone, I speak in English, my phone transfers that to text, it understands the sentence, it converts the sentence on the web into the real Spanish sentence, and then voice technology converts that Spanish sentence back to Spanish, and you pick up your phone and it actually speaks to you in Spanish. Now you're going to laugh like you were laughing on his TV. It's possible, right? The whole idea, the reason development happens is because we believe something is possible. If you don't believe it's possible, then you might as well go home. Right? So the important part is if we believe something is possible, we're going to give it a shot. It's never the people who become innovators, the people who become thinkers, are the people who believe at the edge of the standard deviation curves, right? Not in the center. It's the 5% here and the 5% here who become really successful. It's never here. If everybody who was successful was in the median, was in the center, then I don't know what the world is going to look like. Then that would not be the center, right? Then the graph would change. I'm sure there are much more smart people there. So I'm going to show you an example of how this works on Gmail for now. Possible today. You can actually now have online conversations in your instant messengers where you can translate languages and communicate with people around the world. Don't underestimate the impact of that, because for the first step what we've also done is these 1.4 billion people can actually understand each other in their own languages. Right? I knew there was a reason that I did not learn many languages when I was young. I just found out. So that's why people who think they should send their kids to China and make them learn Chinese, or send them to India and make them learn Hindi, you might have to look at this at demo and start thinking, perhaps all this translation is going to make all that unnecessary. Anyway. And last thing, which I'm going to say, is the whole, somebody talked about advertising, somebody talked about creating content, all this stuff. Life is going to become a lot more personal. It's going to become a lot more personal. And I have a very interesting example, because I very rarely forward things that come to me by email. But I had this interesting video sent to me, and I couldn't quite understand what was going on, so I forwarded it around to my marketing people. I'll show you what it was. It was,
U.S. elections are always close, but the nation was shocked Tuesday night to see John McCain defeat Barack Obama by a single vote.
We sure showed them what a comeback looks like.
For many, shock soon turned to outrage as the New York Times revealed the identity of the particular non-voter responsible for Obama's loss. In just a few short days, this private citizen has become a national pariah. Fearing retribution, local police took the non-voter into protective custody yesterday at City Hall. Disgruntled citizens have been demonstrating ever since.
We were supposed to Barack the vote, but what happened? The vote didn't even get Baracked.
I waited in line 5 hours to vote with an arthritic hip, and this mother couldn't get out of bed in time to vote.
International reaction has been just as intense, even in some of the most remote locations.
Yo, meron ba ma yo? Yo, di just have
Has become a hero to a small sliver of the population.
I thank you for your service. I thank you for what you've done for the United States of America.
That guy is a factor viewer. He's also a patriot.
Coming up, how long until we nuke Iran? Experts say it could be as early as Saturday, around lunchtime.
that was a piece of personalized viral marketing. It was actually funded by the Obama campaign and sent to people. And at the end of this email, I could put 6 people's name, and it would automatically generate this video and create it for those 6 people. Do you realize the power of this? It made me laugh. This is the only thing I've ever forwarded in the last many years which has come to me on the internet, because it was personalized. Right? And this
Dexter,
is sorry?
Dexter, the CEO, they're doing this kind of things.
Yes, yeah, now suddenly I'm getting a lot more of these. There's lots of people who figured this out, and I'm getting a lot more personalized stuff. But what's interesting is suddenly this whole interactive medium, this 1.4 billion people, all these people together with the advent of Facebook, YouTube, Google, etc. Suddenly, it's no longer about talking to the masses. It is talking to the individual. Again, this is going to change a lot of stuff in the way we deal with today, whether it's broadcasting, whether it's advertising, it's a whole bunch of stuff, right? The only reason I'm bringing these things up is because I'm trying to open your minds and show you the art of the possible today and what that art of the possible means for us in the next 10 years. Now, what are right now small examples of one person or 5 people or one company or 2 companies doing it? The question is, how long before this becomes the way we operate and the current ways we operate are no longer in fashion or become redundant? So, my conclusion is, a great wind is blowing, and that gives you either imagination or a headache. So I'm not sure if the last 30 minutes gave you more to go back home and think about, or you guys are going to say, let me get out if I've had a long day. All right, that was the end of my presentation. Thank you. I haven't answered all your questions, I know. But I'm conscious of time, I'm conscious of the need to get done. But you invite me back, I'll probably answer those questions and not make a presentation next time.
Would you like to have a seat? Maybe we have time for some questions.
Okay, well then you can ask me your questions again, I'll try and answer them. How's that?
So,
if people have to leave, feel free to leave. I will not be offended.
Well, you said that you believe in the future all the information is going to be stored on the internet. I believe this is going to happen, but my worry is it's good until nobody can control it. But if there is someone that has the control over this information, maybe it's not going to happen. What do you think about that?
It's good if nobody can control it. If somebody can control it, it's bad.
if there is one that can control it, the power that it's going to have, it's so big.
Yeah, you know, I'm a bit more relaxed about it because I have this long-term view that if we create the structures right in the world, if we create society in the right way, people will organize towards, you know, protecting us from these adverse situations from happening. And most recently, one social networking business chose to try and change its terms and conditions, and people organized against it and protested, and they made them change it back. So, you know, we get feedback from users, and we do things which users ask us to. Don't forget, these 1.4 billion people are very opinionated, and they're very active. And whilst the internet business has been around only for, you know, in mass market terms, 5 or 6 years, what is very important is to build the long-term trust of the user and the consumer. Right? The day you don't trust Google, the day you don't trust the service that you use, you will leave because there are actually many alternatives. So I think over time what is going to happen is a bit of Darwinism will happen. It sort of happens in every industry, right? If somebody produces crappy products, you can't survive for too long because consumers figure it out and move to somebody who produces a better product and provides you longer term trust. And by the way, we all went to business school. It is actually in the long-term interest, in the long-term commercial interest for you to maintain your brand and maintain the trust of the consumer. Otherwise, it's a slippery road down that path.
Well, it was estimated recently that the carbon footprint of the Facebook equals to the carbon footprint of the New York. So speaking about the future, and imagining the scale of this awful stuff you showed us, we can imagine the effect of the IT infrastructure on the environment of this growth. What Google is thinking about it?
Well, let me answer the question in multiple levels, right? I think it's a valid concern. At one level, we are trying to build the most efficient data centers in the world. And if you pay attention to some of our literature on our data centers, where we put them near power sources, because Larry rightfully has pointed out that 40% of power is lost from the point of generation to the point of distribution. Right? So when we plug your charger in your home, actually 40% more needs to be produced for you to have that electricity because of the infrastructure on the way, it gets lost. So what we do is we move our data centers to the point of generation. So we actually try and save 40% of the cost. But that's not enough of an answer, right? We also do lots of stuff to try and reduce the carbon footprints and a whole bunch of stuff. The one thing which I think also gets lost in this process is we talked about e-commerce, we talked about various things, we talked about libraries. Just also please try and compare the amount of carbon footprint you reduce by the fact that I don't have to get in my car, drive to the grocery store, wait in line, you know, wait for the person to serve me, and all the different things. So there's a bit of a shifting going on between how we spend our lives versus how we're going to spend our lives. And I think some of that carbon footprint will equate there. I think the bigger challenge obviously as society we're getting more and more automated, more and more, so we're doing more and more consumption of power and energy from different things that we do, and we have to find ways of consciously watching out for that across the board. Hopefully when you turn off your TV and use your computer, you'll be averaging the power and those TVs go away, right? Sorry. Yes?
We have been seeing a lot of Facebook and YouTube, but I was wondering what is the business model, how you plan to generate revenue from YouTube or Facebook or any social media?
Well, last I checked, Facebook was a self-standing independent business, and we are not responsible for their business model, but I understand your question. No. From a Facebook and YouTube perspective, I think as I said earlier, I think the biggest revolution we're going to see, at least I believe personally, we're going to see is the way people consume entertainment. And YouTube or sites like that, whether it's Juiced or Hulu or the BBC iPlayer or Sky Player in the UK, they're all mechanisms of consuming entertainment. And if you think about it, in this online world, what happens is a tremendous amounts of users are created so that you have critical mass, and once you have critical mass, then you start working on different ways of monetizing it, whether it's advertising or subscription. I think those means will be applied, and there's a lot of work going on in finding ways of monetizing that sort of user interest and that user behavior. And to be fair, some will succeed and some will not, and which don't succeed will sort of reinvent themselves in a different way and find a different way to do this. But it's much easier being in an industry where there's tremendous consumer demand and you need to find a way of creating the right value balance for them, as opposed to an industry where consumer demand is declining and you're struggling to find the right balance.
One final question. You?
I have one.
You have one. We have to move to the other meeting, but anyway.
So now that we are talking about the future of the internet, being now in this economic downturn right now, do you have an opinion about in which way that downturn could impact the internet in the future? Do you foresee any problem there?
Well, economic downturns are part of cyclicality that have happened in society for a long time. Now, there are clearly pros and cons of this. The bad effect is it's seriously impacting consumers. There's GDP declines around the world. Consumers are getting concerned. So we're seeing tremendous amount of consumer and user behavior where people are concerned, which means they will buy less goods and services over the shorter term until people get more confidence and the world comes back to a different economic path. So clearly there's going to be different consumer demand, which impacts lots of businesses around the world, which impacts advertising, which impacts how some of this stuff is funded on the internet. So that's one part of the answer. On the other side, a lot of responsible governments are trying to figure out how to strike the right balance by trying to figure out how we can invest in infrastructure in the time frame and try and regenerate economies and try and create more jobs. And that sort of increased focus on infrastructure is actually going to continue, it's actually going to accelerate some of the developments in terms of providing access to people for broadband or access to people to some of this stuff. So I think it's sort of a balance. On one hand, it's going to be less advertising revenues across the board, across various industries. On the other hand, there'll be renewed focus on infrastructure. And I haven't stopped my number of searches in a day or my number of visits to various parts of the internet because of the economic crisis. Have you?
It depends.
Your behavior might have changed.
I don't have access to the internet and then I have to face travel and that could be an issue.
So
especially since we are talking about innovation also.
Yeah. So I think it's a tough balance, and I think there's going to be both those effects. And as it becomes clearer how long and when this crisis is going to revert itself, it'll become a bit easier. But I think that's a larger problem generally for the world economy as opposed to specifically for the internet.
Yes. Since 1870, we are using the same keyboard and the same layout, QWERTY. Hundreds of new innovations coming in, and we still with the keyboard. When I see the keyboard go, then I will think that we have made the biggest breakthrough probably in more than 140 years. How do you see that going forward?
It's fascinating.
Because it's unbelievable that we still with the QWERTY being used
why the
for 140 years.
Why the QWERTY keyboard was designed. Yes. It was designed to slow down so that the mechanical typewriters could actually work.
Exactly.
So we're actually designed to slow down our typing.
Exactly.
And we all go and teach our kids. In fact, my daughter has learned it much faster than I did. Right? So you're right. But there are alternative keyboards out there. But for some reason they have not, because this whole problem of legacy and this whole problem of compatibility has caused the fact that we are not evolving to that. So I agree with you. I wish I could find a better answer.
But do you see that talking to the machine, talking to the mobile, can really type and send? And
it can. When my Google phone, I can speak to it and do a Google search, especially useful when I'm driving or when I'm tired and I don't want to type on the keyboard. So yes, but again, this evolution in voice technology is going to come, and as it becomes more and more relevant, then we're going to figure it out. I mean, the one big thing which, and people say we've talked about this for a long time, so why has it not come? The one big thing that has happened is, both on the computing side and the storage side, it has become a lot more efficient and a lot cheaper in the last few years because it's exponentially better. So as you can have huge databases of people's voices from which to access and recognize, it becomes a lot easier for my phone to recognize 20 different accents and voices, as opposed to earlier you had to say it in a special way, right? So otherwise I should say my name and it just find me, search for no cash as opposed to my name. So.
Well, thanks very much again, Mr. Arora. Fascinating presentation, and will you join me in an applause again for our